Sometimes books can be pure entertainment, sometimes they can be an escape, and sometimes you feel like a book was written just for you at a certain point in your life when you need it. And the author that we have today produced one of those books for me, so I'm so thrilled to welcome Mr. Stephen Rowley here. Stephen is the New York Times bestselling author of Lily and the Octopus, a Washington Post notable book of 2016, the editor named by NPR as one of the best books of 2019, The Guncle, a Goodreads Choice Awards finalist for 2021 Novel of the Year and winner of the 22nd Thurber Prize for American Humor, The Celebrants, a Today Show Read with Jenna book club pick, and his newest, The Guncle Abroad. His fiction is published in 20 languages. All of his books are in development for feature film or television adaptation. He's originally from Portland, Maine, a graduate of Emerson College, and currently resides in Palm Springs with his husband, the writer Byron Lane, and 2 rescue dogs. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Stephen Rowley.
Hello, sir.
Wow, with that introduction, I feel I deserve sitting in this throne.
You do. It fits you.
Thank you. I may never give it up.
You are at the tail end of a 4-week book tour for The Guncle Abroad. How has it been going? What are the highlights? And what was the favorite question that was asked to you? Because I'm going to steal it and then ask it. That's a lot of questions.
That's a lot. That's a lot at once, especially after 4 weeks. I'm like, where am I? What day is it? No, first of all, I'm thrilled to be here in Nantucket. It's my first time on the island. I'm a good New England boy at heart, but for some reason I've never made it to Nantucket. So this is so fun. Goodness, it's been such a whirlwind tour, and I wish I could remember who asked me this question. We're really going to start out with a bang. My favorite question, and one I've never been asked before, because I'm very inspired, if you read these books, by the sort of magical caregiver genre, the sort of Auntie Mame, Maria from The Sound of Music, Mary Poppins, and it's been a great joy to create an entry into this. But someone asked me, they just stood up and they said, Julie Andrews as Maria, or Julie Andrews as Mary Poppins?
Ooh, and?
I can't believe I'm going to say this in a church, but I said Maria as The Sound of Music. I mean, it was good nun, that's a good one, but also because I wanted to bed a Navy captain.
That is starting out with a bang right there.
We're setting the tone. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, the throne is being taken away from me. Yeah.
Okay, let's rewind back to your debut novel, Lily and the Octopus. How many pet lovers do we have out there? How many out here have a pet? And you made octopuses cool before anyone else did. This was 2016 when Lily and the Octopus came out. When I read Lily and the Octopus, I was on a plane, and I think I uncontrollably sobbed that the flight attendant came up to me and said, "Sir, are you okay?" When you're writing those scenes, and all of your books have this very tearful reaction, are you crying when you're writing them?
That one for sure. Like, we all kind of know the deal with pet books, right? We kind of know where they're going, and because of that, some people, a lot of readers are afraid, I think, of picking it up. And I also have to promise, that in all my books, despite maybe you'll cry, but you'll definitely laugh, hopefully. And so I hope you laugh some too, or at least got a free drink out of it from the concerned flight attendant. But yeah, people come to me and they're afraid to read it. Am I going to cry? As if that's a bad thing. But if a piece of art evokes an emotional response, I think that's the purpose of creative work. And so I don't ever see it as a bad thing. But yeah, sometimes, there was a moment in writing The Guncle Abroad where I started crying. I was like, oh, you guys are goners. So sometimes I know. And
Lily and the Octopus was inspired by your dog, correct?
Yeah, so I did have a dog named Lily. So Lily and the Octopus is about a man who wakes up one morning and thinks he sees a small octopus affixed to his dachshund Lily's head. And I did have a dog named Lily. I never really thought there was an octopus there, but in real life she had a brain tumor, which was this sort of bump on her head, and I knew inherently what I was writing about was attachment and how difficult it can be to let go. And so having God, this is week 4 book tour stuff. Tentacular, is that a word? Tentacular metaphor that could have a stranglehold on her. It made sense to me, but it was a little out there, I think, and it took me a long time to sort of break through with that as my first book. If you want to hear absolute silence on the other end of a telephone call, call New York publishing agents and ask if they want to read your book about a dog and an octopus. With an octopus stuck to her head. And then I think I tried to say, well, it's like a cross between Joan Didion's Year of Magical Thinking and Moby Dick.
Click.
Click. Yeah, that did not get me an agent either. So I don't know. I feel very fortunate to be here at all. Yeah.
What do you think it is about a pet that brings out our human condition, like in love, and the love of a pet that brings out?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up with dogs in Maine, but it was a very different situation, right? In the 70s and 80s when I was growing up, they were very much pets. They kind of slept in the barn. And now if I said, oh, my dogs sleep in the barn, you'd call the ASPCA, right? Like we have welcomed them into our families at a rapid, so rapidly, but we haven't evolved the conversation about how we grieve them. Right? These are now difficult losses. We love them fully, but we sort of know the deal going in. They don't live as long as we do. And so that's what it was an important book for me, not only to celebrate that love that we have for them, but also try to get a conversation going about these losses can be very hard. Particularly sometimes on older people who rely on pets to get them out of the house or to walk or be involved in the community. I'm honored to have really sort of explored that sort of pet grief in a book. But my favorite thing about people who love animals is that so many of us, we grieve, we love them, we lose them, we grieve. And then when the time is right, for some people it's the next day, for some people it's, a year or so. So many of us get back to the end of the line and sign up to do it all over again because it is so worth it. It's so worth it. And so shout out to Raindrop and Shirley, my two rescues now. Yeah.
I bet you miss them.
I do miss them, yeah.
Okay.
I miss my husband as well.
You're just saying that because it's recorded.
This is being recorded. Yeah.
So you mentioned another characteristic of your books, which is the humor, and of course I always laugh. And I know the answer to this question because we had dinner last night and just even in the first 5 minutes here. Does humor come naturally to you when you're writing as naturally as it does in this situation?
Humor in a novel format is always difficult, I think, for a number of reasons, right? It's very different than just being up here and be able to riff and have fun with you. One, it's easy. It's nice to have a conversation partner, where your novel writing is very sort of a much more solitary endeavor. And so when you're sitting at home alone, you don't always know that you're funny or feel funny. But also, it's not like writing a Tonight Show monologue, right? You want your book to have a long shelf life, so the humor is not topical. It has to come from knowing your characters so well to be able to joke as a character is a whole other skill set. I don't think I always sometimes I cry while I'm writing. I don't always laugh when I'm writing, but it's not until I put the book aside for a couple months and come back to it, if I can, sometimes I'll laugh. Sometimes I'll laugh then, just because I've forgotten how.
Do you ever give it to Byron and say, oh, read this part, and he didn't laugh, and you're like, that's funny?
All the time.
Okay, it won the 22nd Thurber Prize for American Humor. Can you talk about who James Thurber was and what that award, and why do you think the Gunkel won it? Like, what do you think stood out about the Gunkel for that award?
Yeah, I'm bowled over by it. So James Thurber was perhaps the most prolific humorist of the 20th century. He was an essayist, a novelist, short story writer, playwright, cartoonist. A lot of his work appeared in The New Yorker. People know some of his film adaptations of Battle of the Sexes and I think most famously The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. But he was incredibly prolific, and the award that's named after him is the sort of highest award for written humor in the United States. James McBride won the year before I did for Deacon King Kong, but we're talking about Jon Stewart, The Onion, David Sedaris, David Rakoff, Patricia Lockwood, some really incredible names. Bob Newhart and David Letterman and Al Franken were all finalists but did not win. So it's incredible. And all I can think of is that humor is a wonderful tool, but it's just a tool. So it is what you want to use humor to accomplish and what you want to say with humor. And I think that something I'm very proud of in these Gunkel books is that you hear a lot from, I'm not going to rag on straight men here, but it's often straight men who say this, that it's impossible to be funny in politically correct times. And I strongly disagree with that. I think if that's really what you think, I think you were probably mistaking humor for cruelty in the first place. And we can't punch down anymore, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing, and it should make you work a little harder to find the better joke.
So I shared this earlier, but the Guncle means so much to me. You know this because we've done several interviews, but I lost my sister to cancer in 2017, and when she went into hospice, my husband and I went back. She has 3 children. Savannah was 11, and Leah and Logan, the twins, were 8 and 9. And so their Guncles had to take them to entertain them during the hardest point in time. So you also, in the Guncle, was inspired by a little bit of your own grief that you lost someone. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah. Well, first, as you know, I'm very sorry for your own loss, and it is incredible, as you say. When a book, it's always the books that intersect us at the right moment in our own lives that I think resonate with us and stay with us forever. But yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, The Guncle is about a character, Patrick O'Hara, who's kind of a semi-retired television actor living a somewhat reclusive life in Palm Springs when he's tasked with taking in his niece and nephew after the death of their mother. I did not know you when writing this book, but I'm grateful for the book for bringing us together and cementing this friendship, even though I'm very sorry for the reasons behind it. I lost one of my best friends from college to breast cancer, and she left behind a 6-year-old son. So hopefully the book is still very funny, but it is also a serious exploration of grief. And I talked about being inspired by Auntie May. I love the Auntie May novels from the 1950s and the movies and the musical and everything that went along with that. But she sent her kid to boarding school. When she inherited her nephew, off to boarding school he went, and it sort of sidestepped the issue of grief. And I knew if I were going to do a modern sort of reinterpretation of that kind of story, that grief had to be. I wanted to tackle it head on, because what is the role of the other people? In your sister's life, in my friend's life, to step up and remind these children how fiercely they were loved. And what is the responsibility to sort of step in and really help help them to remember their mom.
And I feel like my nieces and nephews gave me so much. Like they were almost the resilient ones in comforting me, which I found fascinating that they were going through that and had that in them.
Yeah, and it's one of the great joys in writing the sequel. So the sequel takes place 5 years after the events of the first book. It's not a spoiler to say, for anyone who hasn't read either book, it's not a spoiler to say Patrick had these kids for the summer. It's set up that way from the beginning. At the end of the summer, they go back to Connecticut, where they're from, and a home where their mom no longer is. So in many ways, those kids' grief journey was just beginning at the end of the first book. And so I felt compelled. I think a lot of people assume that Patrick's such a fun character to write, and he is, but spoiler alert, there's a lot of Patrick right here. And so I can hang out with Patrick anytime I want to. It's just it was really the kids. I was like, are the kids okay? I really felt compelled to check in and find out.
So you and I are both gay.
Is it the pants? Is it the pants that gave it away?
I think it's my face. June is Pride Month. What does pride mean to you? Because I feel so fortunate that you and I are able to joke and to be around a community and people that would laugh at that and like us. There's a huge percentage of this country and world, though, that still doesn't understand us, still doesn't want us to have the same rights.
There are days I don't understand us. So it's like I get it sometimes, but...
So what does Pride Month mean to you?
I think a lot about this because, spoiler alert, I'm a little older than Tim. And Patrick in this sequel is facing turning 50. And it's something that I recently faced. And, I give a lot of thought to, we can moan these big birthdays and these milestones that it's no fun to get older. But my thoughts turn to all the beautiful souls, who are 5 years, 10 years older than I am, who did not get to see their 50th birthday because of the AIDS crisis, and who would have given anything, I think, to still be here. And so my little complaints about aging, and you'll hear me groan when I get out of this throne, because that's what happens now when you stand up in your 50s. You know, that's a real sort of privilege. And so I think about when writing books with queer characters now, I think of me as a young closeted kid in the 80s, and you know, I came out in 1991, I think. So, you know, it's hard not to look back and reflect on this societal change that has happened, and rather rapidly. I never thought marriage equality was something I would see in my lifetime. It just seemed impossibly far away. So the idea of having children of my own, which I don't, you know, was, you know, perhaps that was a failure of imagination on my part, but it didn't seem like a possibility for me. And so to write these books, which are somewhat a celebration of queer families too, that it's amazing to see all the gay families that sort of exist now. It's really lovely. And also, you know, I try to write joy into my books, because the queer literature that was available to me when I was closeted, and it was a reflection of the times, but largely about lives lived in the shadows, lonely existences, who were often cut short. And so that's what I feared life would be. And instead, life has been quite the opposite. It's been filled with community and found family and joy. And so I think that's important to put in books for young people accessing them and wondering what their lives might look like today.
I think the first time that I really thought about that generation that we lost was when we had Rebecca Makkai here for the book festival, and she wrote Great Believers. Have you read that?
Oh, yeah.
And that was the first time that I was like, we owe them so much and never take for granted of what we are able to have.
Yeah, and you know, Patrick struggles, and I guess I struggle too with the idea that there are not a lot of role models for gay men growing older. There are some, and I'm grateful for them, but you know, we've been robbed of too many.
You're such a role model for
Well,
me.
now can I be? Yeah, can I? Now I'm the role model. Great. Yeah.
Okay, my favorite part about the Guncle is the rules that Patrick gives to the kids. What are some of Stephen Rowley's rules?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, so in the first book, there are sort of Guncle rules, and some are fun and some are serious. So some are like, bottomless mimosas are not the same thing as pantsless mimosas. You know, like you've got to learn the difference. Like some of them are funny. But
my favorite mimosa one is that the orange juice is just like you just have to hover it over.
Oh yeah, just wave the orange over a glass of champagne. It's
because
probably
if there's
still too much
even more,
orange
yes.
juice. Yeah. But there's some serious ones built in there as well. In this book, so it's 5 years later, the children's father is engaged to be remarried, and the children are not happy. And they're 11 and 14 now, which means they're not as cute and cuddly as they once were. But they're still a joy in this book. But Patrick sort of takes them through Europe on their way to their father's wedding in Italy, trying to teach them the whole time, against this sort of backdrop of the great European cities, about love. And so instead of rules in this one, there are Guncle love languages. He's trying to teach them his spin on the 5 love languages. And so if I have rules, and these are not from the book, but I think like, so in terms of what I've learned about love, I think, and I wish young people knew this, but I think one of my rules is it's lonelier to be with the wrong person than it is to be by yourself. And I wish that was a lesson that young people knew. 2, don't undervalue kindness as a characteristic in choosing a partner. Did you ask me for, was that 2, 3?
You can give me as many as you can just keep them coming.
I'll keep them coming. Just because I was flirting shamelessly with your husband last night at dinner.
I mean, he's a catch.
He's a catch. He's 6'4", and so how about legs that go all the way to the ground? I said.
And perfect hair.
Yeah.
So no more rules?
That's good for now.
So I mentioned my sister. Siblings, I think, are the most fascinating characters to unpack in novels. It's my favorite. You're most biologically like this person, and sometimes you do not like them. They're your first friend, but then they're your biggest enemy.
First enemy, too, yes. Sometimes. But
and you do that so much in the...
Like Claire Lombardo's,
yes,
the
most fun we ever had.
Great sibling stories I love. Right,
and you have some siblings. Do you have siblings?
I do. I'm the oldest of 4.
And do you like them all?
What day is today?
Didn't you just leave? You were just.
I just spent a week with them, so yeah. No, yes, I do very much. But we're very. It's strange. So I'm the oldest of four. My parents divorced when I was a senior in high school, and so I left for college. I grew up in a two-parent home, mostly with a stay-at-home mom. My younger siblings sort of grew up. The youngest two sort of grew up in a single-parent home with. A work. They were more latchkey kids, and it's interesting. I only bring this up because it's interesting to see, like, even though we, on some ways, it was almost like we had a different upbringing. It's fun to see the ways we are the same and the ways we are different. Yeah.
Are your siblings, the siblings in the books, are they in there? Is it like kind of the same or not?
Well, everyone's in there. I mean, like, I feel for you if you are related to or friends with a writer. Just be careful what you say at all times, because we are sponges. I try not to do that with my own nieces and nephews. I have 5 nieces and nephews in real life. Patrick has a line in the book that he is like their therapist or their doctor or their priest, in that they enjoy total confidentiality with him. And I try to extend that to my own nieces and nephews, so I don't try to rob from them, but everybody else anyone over 18 is fair game. Yeah.
So it's.
But I do, the sister in the book, Clara, I do have 2 sisters who always want me to mention that they are not the sister in the book. So.
Sure.
Okay.
The Guncle Abroad is a sequel, and sequels are scary because you have something that everyone loved, and everyone on social media loved The Guncle. I mean, it was probably the most popular book I saw on every post. So when you're doing the sequel, were you scared about a sequel? Have you ever tried a sequel? How was that process for you?
Oh, it was terrifying. Yeah. It was terrifying because I think one of the things that an author has no control over is the state of the world when their book is released. And to the extent that this is about characters who have been living in a dark year, finding their way back to the light, and it came out in May 2021 when vaccines were first available, and we were all emerging from a dark year. There was something about that book and that moment that resonated with people. And I'm still shocked, winning the Thurber Prize, being a bestseller, movies in the works. Whoopi Goldberg held it up on The View and said it's her favorite book to return to whenever she needs a laugh. And she was a, comedic hero of mine growing up. So the capturing lightning twice seemed, like impossible. So it seemed like there were parts of me that were only set up for failure. But once I found the story, I had a great time, revisiting these characters. But winning the Thurber Prize halfway through writing the sequel was also, that'll mess with you. Because I was like, oh, there's no way this will be as funny as the first. And then, to be quite honest, the pendulum would swing and I'd be like, oh no, it's too funny. It's too funny. Which is not me saying I'm such a genius, but I was worried that then suddenly I'm chasing jokes at the expense of the other things that people loved about the book, the relationships, the characters, the heart. That's in the book as well. So finding that balance, again, was something I worked very hard on, but I'm so pleased with the reception for this.
You nailed it. If you think, as a writer, that every book teaches you something about your craft and then about being a human, what would you say that The Guncle Abroad taught you?
Ooh, that's a good one. One, I think the book's theme is that there is room for joy, again, even after great loss. And that sometimes the best way to honor those we lose is by embracing life. And so I really wanted that to be a lesson that, not only for the children to learn, but for readers to be reminded of. But 2, for myself, I think it's a book about maturing. The children, not only the children are 11 and 14. Yeah, sorry. I remember there were 6 and 9. I was like, how quickly can I add 5 to 6 and 9? Emerson College in Boston, if you know it, they don't teach math, really. Great school otherwise.
Hardly an ad for them.
Yeah, no. They do everything else really well, but they're not known for math. Patrick's facing his 50th birthday and maturing, and hopefully I'm maturing as a writer too. And so embracing some of that it's okay to age, that good things come with aging is something I learned.
We mentioned Byron. You're married to another writer, which I can't even fathom. How does that work? Are you the same type of writer? Talk about what it's like in your home.
Well, I know a lot of writer friends, and I can tell from your reaction that a lot of people assume that would be a nightmare. And there are days. But we've learned to navigate it pretty well. We're the same in that we write sort of in the similar vein, very sort of a mix of heart and humor. It's not like one of us writes speculative science fiction or something. So, I'm a fan of his work. If you read my work and like it, you will like, his first book was a book called A Star is Bored, but about his friendship with the actress and writer Carrie Fisher, who was a big part of his life. But we're different. We have different styles of writing. So I'm a classic, what we call in the biz, a pantser. More fly by the seat of my pants. I know the beginning, and I usually know the ending. It's all that sort of middle part, like I haven't picked on the map which road we're taking to get there. And he is, by definition, a plotter. And so there's a wall in our house that is filled with holes because he's put push pins and recipe cards all through it, which plots out his novel from beginning to end. I'm like, are you going to patch that wall when you're done? So we're different in that way. We've had to learn how to give each other notes, I think, which is always a challenge, because is he asking me as a spouse, in which case I want to be supportive? Is he asking me as another writer or to look with an editorial eye? So he does not like it when I try to punch up his jokes. That never goes out. But then I pull out my Thurber Prize and I'm just like...
Speaks for itself.
Yeah.
So writing is a solitary job, but you have to then go on this 4-week book tour and be in front of everyone. How is that transition from going from sitting at your computer and writing it to then being the life of the party and talking about it?
Well, thank you for saying life of the party. I do enjoy this. I think there are a lot of writers who this would be their own. This is their own personal hell, right? They're writers because they're introverts, and so I feel for those people. Me, on the other hand, I only do the writing so that someone will hand me a microphone and a throne. No, I love the writing too, but this is a nice balance to it. It's a nice balance to the sort of solitary nature of the actual writing work. And then being able to connect and meet with readers is so incredibly special because not only is writing a solitary endeavor, oftentimes reading is too. And it's nice to be surrounded by a community, particularly if they've all sort of read your book or you're connecting over a single work. That's why I love book clubs. So if you have book clubs, I go to book clubs. I go to book clubs in person. They're not always happy to see you because there's one person at least who does not want to read the book. And they just want to talk about who doesn't bring in their trash cans, or whose husband is doing God knows what. And if the author's there, that's difficult. They just glare at you like, when are you leaving? I do a lot of book clubs. I do a lot of book clubs via Zoom too. And I just signed off on one recently. Like you go to it and you hit the end broadcast, or whatever, the Zoom thing. And before I can before I can hit click, I hear this one voice go, well, he was a lot.
I'm gonna write that on my Instagram post right after this.
Tim Ehrenberg, a lot.
A lot. No one tells jokes anymore. Will you tell us one?
Goodness. I like to think of myself as a humorist, and so I don't have like a whole bunch of knock jokes. But I've been with my nieces and nephews this past week in Maine, and so they love jokes. And they told me one recently that reminded me of our dinner last night, or it reminds me of Nantucket. And it was, what do you get when you cross a rabbit with a shellfish? The oyster bunny.
That's darling.
Listen, I'm saving the prize-winning stuff for the books. If you have $29, you get the real stuff.
I always get nervous about jokes. I'm like, am I going to understand it? Am I going to get it?
Yeah.
I want to go back, because I forgot, I really love this question. We gather author fun facts from all of our authors that are presenting this weekend, and I loved yours. I thought yours was so sweet. You said, when I was a kid of 7 or 8, my dad took one of my short stories and made several photocopies at his office so I could share the story with family and friends. It was the first time I realized that there could be more than one copy of something I'd written. From that moment on, I dreamed of having a book published. Can you take us back to that, Steve, what was the book about? Do you remember?
Oh, goodness. I wish I did remember. I don't. I just remember how neatly it was collated and stapled. And I thought, oh, this.
Gay man
this
was
is brilliant.
born.
Yeah, both a homosexual and a writer were born in that moment. But yeah, it was such a light bulb moment for me. Like, oh my God, like I can not only write, but I can share what I've written. Yeah, that was exciting.
Okay, my favorite thing to do with authors is my speed round. So are you ready?
60 seconds on the clock.
If you could have any superhero power, what would it be?
Oh, invisibility. Because writers are observers. That is what we do. And so if I'm sorry, this is not as, should I stop there? This is not as speedy as it should be. But if I'm out writing and trying to work in a coffee shop or whatever, I'll have my headphones in. I'll be like, I'm not listening to anything. I'm just getting people comfortable talking around me, assuming I'm not listening. So invisibility. I got you. Don't worry. I won't be sneaking up on you. Don't worry.
That outfit is not invisible, though.
No.
What would the title of your autobiography be?
He was a lot.
I'd buy that book.
I think. What else can I go with?
Okay, finish these sentences. Stephen Rowley likes
having written.
Stephen Rowley wishes he never
misspelled words.
Stephen Rowley is embarrassed by
misspelling words.
Stephen Rowley wants to do this on Nantucket.
Oh. No.
Okay, wrap it up. Festival over.
That was a joke. Cut the broadcast. Cut the broadcast. No,
my mother is going to watch this.
So is mine. No, I want to eat really. The thing about book tours, you're grabbing too much food in airports. You're on the run. So I'm going to eat really well while I'm here. Yeah.
Last book to make you laugh.
Oh, to make me laugh? Oh goodness. Come and Get It by Kylie Reid.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Last book to make you cry.
Oh God. Hello, Beautiful. And Napolitano. Yeah.
What is something no one knows about you?
I feel like an open book. I don't know.
Yes.
What you see is what you get. Yeah. I don't know that there is anything, but I'm going to think about that. Yeah, I'll think about that.
I want to open it up to questions now. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Stephen Rowley?
It's like Donahue here. We'll run over with the microphone. Yeah.
Hi. The way that you've talked about the kids in the book make it sound like you view them as equal protagonists with Patrick. And it made me wonder, when you write the children, do you approach them differently than writing adult main characters? Is it easier or harder? How does that work?
Yeah, I think it's harder. So the children being 11 and 14 in the new book, not only did I have to think about, how do they age, just age in 5 years, but also they've had Patrick in their life for 5 years now. So they're not as charmed by some of his antics as they used to be. And likewise, I really had to think, how does grief inform the way that the children grow? And, I think for Maisie, the older child, she has taken on some of the maternal role for her younger brother. For Grant, the boy, I think it sort of delayed his adolescence a little bit, but giving that great thought and sort of meeting them where I thought they were. I think the great challenge in writing kids in literature is that, it's, the mistake is to just write them as little adults, or you make them too, twee, too precious and whatnot. And so it's really understanding kids. And that comes from observing, that comes from remembering what it was like to be a kid yourself. Because I think although a lot has changed about growing up in childhood, some of the core emotional fears and feelings about growing up have remained the same. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
I think there's one back there.
So I realize we're here talking about the second book, but I'm hoping that the Gunkel books will be a throuple. And how old will the kids be in the third book?
That's a great question. So there is for those who don't understand that, there is a throuple. a gay throuple in the first book, the neighbors over the wall. They were like sort of like a little snap, crackle, and pop, a sort of Greek chorus sometimes, looking in on the action. And I love that people loved the throuple from that first book. So should this be a trilogy? I don't know. I didn't know there would be a sequel, though. But if I'm back here at the Nantucket Book Festival in 2030 and I've written The Guncle in Space, please take the microphone away from me. Yeah, I'm begging you for an intervention at that point.
That is a great question. Now, I know you don't know, but would you see them as adults ever?
I think the only way I was able to do this one was with the time jump, that really helped, because it really would be hard to just continue exactly what I had done before. And so I think there would be another time jump. And maybe I do feel some responsibility to see these kids into young adulthood and what that might look like.
I hope so. Some more questions?
Right down here. Yeah, you can shout and I'll repeat.
He's coming.
Okay. Who would I cast in the movie of The Guncle as Patrick? I'm going to turn that back on all of you. Do you have someone you...
Jesus?
Yeah. Do you have someone you've pictured while reading? No. Or not necessarily, yeah. There are a lot of fan favorites. I've heard Dan Levy from Schitt's Creek a lot. But there's some great actors who are raising kids themselves, and that perspective would be interesting. I think of Neil Patrick Harris or Matt Bomer or Jesse Tyler Ferguson all have kids of their own, and there are a lot of Patrick is a former sitcom actor, so there's Sean Hayes and Jim Parsons and that. I think there are lots of there's lots of great choices. So I'm excited to see who it'll be. But whoever it is, I'll have to pretend they were my first choice all along. Yeah.
We have time for some more.
Oh, don't make him go back to the lightning round. That's scary.
I have more.
Did you get to go to Europe to research the new book? And what's your favorite country?
Did I get to go to Europe? I have. A lot of Patrick's journey is based on places that I have been. Sadly, it was all pre-COVID travel. So cut to me on the phone with my accountant being like, can we reopen the tax returns from 2017, 2018, and 2019? Because these are now research trips. I don't think he quite saw it my way, or the IRS will see it my way. But yeah, I do think it's important to write about places that you've been. It's all this, I think we've all read things where the writer you can tell the writer's very enchanted with their research, but it's missing that air of authenticity. Like, what did the air feel like? What are the scents and the smells? And what does the food taste like? It's all those sort of tactile things that I think make a novel so rich, and that really helps from being there. And I think but I will cop to the fact that I have not been, there's a scene where he takes them to Salzburg to go on the Sound of Music tour, and I have not been. But thank you to everyone who has been and put the videos on YouTube like that. That was very helpful. But if you ever hear that Byron and I got divorced, it'll be because I took him to Salzburg and forced him to go on the Sound of Music tour with me. So if anybody wants to volunteer to go with me, we'll all go abroad together. Yes, great. But I think Italy of these countries that I've been in the book, I think Italy is my favorite destination. Yeah.
I think we have time for one more. Yep, back there.
Thanks. I wanted to ask you about Grant, because he had such a sweet voice, and I always thought, I wonder what the writer's underlying message might be to us in his character.
Aha, that's a great question. Did anybody listen to the audiobooks? Yeah, a few here. So I narrated the audiobooks for both of these myself. And I thought I was so brilliant writing the first book, because I'm gonna give one of the kids a lisp. I gave Grant a lisp, because then I don't have to tag every piece of dialogue. I don't have to write he said, she said, Maisie said, Grant said. It'll be clear which child is talking. And then I went in to narrate the audiobook. And I was like, son of a bitch. Who did this? So page 1 of The Guncle Abroad. Grant outgrows his lisp. again, patting myself on the back like this is so
Brilliant.
This is so brilliant. And then I realized, as I'm getting into the narrating process, that all the new characters are Italian. So be prepared for some high school drama department level, Italian. Patrick, why are you the ganko? But with Grant in particular, and having that little impediment, I think it was just, it added an innocence to him, but it was also an opportunity to show, acceptance and not, there are moments, I think, Patrick learns particularly, his lessons for the kids in particular are about sort of radical self-acceptance and kindness, hopefully. And it doesn't mean that once or twice there isn't a little joke about the list, but hopefully it's done with, with love. Yeah. And it was the opportunity to introduce that idea of kindness in humor, hopefully. Yeah. I think we had one more down front. Did you?
Yes.
About my writing process, yeah. Yeah, I try to write in the morning because the day will throw every reason at you not to write. Like, we're out of almond milk. I better go to the store for 12 hours, And then, because writers are famous procrastinators.
Especially pantsers.
Especially pantsers. But the reason why I don't outline everything is because it can feel a little bit like, and this works very well for other writers. So there's as many answers to this question as there are writers, right? But for me, if I know everything that's going to happen that day, the hardest part of the job is butt in chair. And so if I know everything that's going to happen that day, I'm less excited to show up for work. But if I don't know, if there's room to surprise myself, I think even a little bit, then it makes it more exciting to show up to work each day.
Stephen, thank you so much. This was so entertaining.
Thank you.